Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for a little bit of Hebrew as we continue in the book of Jonah. We're still in chapter 1 and on verse 3, and picking up kind of in the middle of verse 3. And you can see on a split screen that we're going to focus a little bit of time on just a word, a couple of words that talk about going down to Joppa. And so on the left side of your screen, it uses the word vayered, he went down, yafo, which is the Hebrew for Joppa, translated in Joppa, yafo, vayimsa, he found, aniyah, a ship, ba'a, Tarshish. And so that's just the portion we're going to look at today. Now, what interested me is this word Tarshish kind of clicked with me about in the New Testament, there's Tall of Tarsus. And so did a quick comparison just to see what some of the searches would tell us and to see if they're the same place, because there might be some um, comparisons that we can draw between Jonah and his mission to Nineveh, which are non-Jewish people, which are Gentiles, and of course Paul coming from Tarsus and his mission to non-Jewish people, which are Gentiles. And so I was drawing kind of a parallel here, looking at the internet overview. It says while some ancient sources identify them as the same, modern scholars think they're two different ones. One was in Tarsus was a city in modern Turkey, where they feel Tarshish is a distant Western Mediterranean location in Spain or Sardinia. But again, they're divided on that. And so it's ancient sources thought they were the same. More modern scholars are saying they're someplace separate, but they can identify the Tarsus, but they cannot really identify where Tarshish is. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. Josephus, who is one of the renowned um, Jewish scholars, identified Tarshish as the city of Tarsus. And of course, he was Jewish, so he had no reason to try to connect the two. He was a predecessor to Saul, who became Paul. So there was no influence there from Christian sources to try to connect these together. So that's kind of interesting. So as we look at this, we see that he went down to Joppa. Now, on the right side of your screen is this book that's been very helpful for me to be able to expound on some things that I've never thought of before. So I'm just kind of sharing them with you. But before we jump into that, we'll take a look at the JPS version with the Hebrew on the left side and the English on the right side, and just to see what the commentator in the JPS has to say. And here he brings up again that Jonah was trying to flee from the face of or the presence of the Lord. And again, we're going to talk about this a little bit further on. Um, the great grace that was shown to Jonah as he is running from God, fleeing and disobeying God, and how God doesn't say, "Okay, I'm done with you. I'm going to pick someone else. You run from me. You're done. I'm giving up on you." There's none of that type of language. There's none of that indication to even say that God wasn't real happy with him with what he did. We're going to see later on in the story where God was a little unhappy with him when he's sitting on a hillside whining about the heat and the sun. But here, when Jonah was fleeing his mission, there's no indication that God was upset with him. And so, again, we see God's mercy really reaching out to him here. So, the term of going down to Joppa in Jewish circles in the Hebrew um, culture, the height of the world, if you will, is Jerusalem. It is at the highest level. In it may not be completely, with the um, latitude, and the elevation, marking that out, but in a spiritual realm and to most of the ancient Jewish people, uh, Jerusalem was the pinnacle, was the high point. And so you never did anything but go down from Jerusalem, or you go up to Jerusalem, but you never go down to Jerusalem. You always go up to Jerusalem, and when you leave Jerusalem, you're always heading down somewhere. And so this whole idea of what we're going to see here is there's a number of times when it's mentioned here in the book of Jonah of Jonah going down. So this is the first one we're going to talk about, that he went down to Joppa. Now, Joppa is Jaffa right now, and it is a seaport. I happened to be there and visited it many years ago while I was traveling in Jerusalem. And so it's on the seaport. It would obviously be down at somewhat closer to sea level. And so you go down to get to Jaffa. Now, it's interesting to point out that Jonah, they evaluate here where he could have gone to hide. And they compare in the biblical texts and in other Jewish writings of people who have tried to flee from God. They didn't go to a cave, they didn't go to the mountains, but he went towards the sea and he's descending. And so they feel that is very critical in understanding the situation that Jonah is in, to see how he is going downward. And so here it talks about going down to a ship. Ships go down to the ocean. And we'll see later when Jonah gets thrown out of the ship, he goes down further. And when he gets caught in the mouth of the huge fish that was created for him, he goes down even further. And so everything is a descending, and it's kind of pointed out in the highlights here that he went into the lower part of the boat. Um, he goes into the sea when the sailors throw him in, and then he goes lower into the belly of the fish, and then the fish goes down to the bottom of the sea, and it talks about being to the base of the mountains. And the whole point here they were talking about was every time he descended in the depths of the sea, that is a comparison of moving farther and farther away from God. And so that was just something I never thought of, is that he's leaving the presence of God. Everything was going downhill. And the rest of this commentary here talks about the different ways that understanding of going downhill has translated into our vernacular of being knocked down for the count, or all of it going downhill. We understand very, very clearly. And so we see that kind of outlined here in the story of Jonah, that he went down to Joppa and he found a ship going to Tarshish. We're going to stop there because there's some fantastic understanding later on when we get back together about what he did, that it outlines some things that are very interesting that we have to look in, like how he paid the fare. Why was it necessary to mention that? And then here it says again, he went down into the boat. So that's where we're going to come back. We'll be off next week, but come back the following week. And I hope you join us. I hope you find this very interesting, and see here as Jonah is running from God, he is descending. And not just in a physical sense, but many different avenues can be talked about, that when a person runs from God, it's more of a slide, a descent, a lowering, and a falling away. All of those terms describe what happens when someone is running from God. So God bless you all. May you be blessed by this study, and see you again next time. Bye bye.